quantum inhibitor or something.
Yeah, exactly. The quantum inhibitor flux is in flux, and so they have to reverse the polarity of the shield. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds like what I do. Like, that's just exactly what I was thinking, doing it. Like, it's so different now with the technobabble. It's hilarious. So basically, Kirk downloads it onto a disc, gives it to Scotty. Scotty's like, well, I'm gonna need help to do this, and he's like, Kirk is too conspicuous, like, to just show up in engineering and help him with this. So he looks at McCoy and he's like, you're gonna have to help me. And we get the line where he's like, I'm a doctor, not an engineer. I love a good I'm a doctor, not a fill in the blank from McCoy. It's great.
Oh, it's so good.
It's great. And Scotty's like, well, now you're an engineer. Surprise, you're also an engineer now. So Scotty's plan is to basically tap, and this is where we get a little technobabble. He's going to tap the power from the warp engines. They're going to balance it for 4 people, and that basically that's going to be able to let them recreate the same conditions of the ion storm and go back to their universe. And then Kirk does something really interesting here. He basically is like, I need to know what kind of a person I'm supposed to be in this universe. He asks the computer for his service record, basically. And it tells him, the first thing it tells him, which I thought was a really great callback, said that he assumed command after assassinating Captain Pike. And I was just like, oh, well, that turned out differently in an hour.
And then the ghost of Captain Pike shows up because we're watching the special edition.
It's Anson found from Discovery.
Yes! Yes! Well, okay, first there's just like, oh no, because he would have had to been in it anyway. Yes, it's going to be Anson Mount.
I love him. He is so good as Captain Pike.
I love him too.
I still haven't watched it, but he's pretty.
He is pretty. I'm not gonna lie. He is pretty.
I mean, from what I've seen, there's quite a few pretty people on that show.
There are. 100% agree. Absolutely.
And other people that I just like, because Tig Notaro was on.
Oh my gosh,
she's great.
Is that what she
funny
came on there? And then and Doug Jones is the tall alien guy, and I love both of them, so I really should watch it.
Doug Jones is such a great, like, he's been in so many things that, like, people may not even realize that he was in, but he's so good at playing the creature in the costume or in the suit. I mean, he's made a career out of it, but he's so good at like when he's playing Saru, and he's, his species was bred to be basically food for a predator species that on the planet he comes from. I mean, for him to leave that planet, to come to Starfleet, to go through the academy, I mean, and to basically be like, he's always afraid, he's always scared, but he pushes past that.
He's like a domesticated chicken.
I mean, pretty much. I mean, how he explains it, his character explains it, that his species were bred as like as food, like, and they're always scared of everything because they're
like the Deep Space Nine episode where the guy is supposed to be chasing the other guy because the guy that's getting chased is the one because of okay.
I am Tosk. Like, that's supposed to explain. I am Tosk. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yes. Great episode. Hey, that's a great
I compared it to another Star Trek thing.
Oh, so
look at you.
Talk about other Star Treks. And, just for a switcheroo, before we started recording, I was watching a Star Wars movie because The Rise of Skywalker is on Disney Plus now. So I was watching that.
Well, I mean, yesterday was Revenge of the 5th, and the day before was May the 4th be with you. So, you're just a little behind.
I am. I'm a little behind. Although, also May 4th is also May LaForge be with you. It's joining.
Ah.
Oh, how about that?
Oh.
Bam!
And one of our friends said that May is May the May DeLorean for the
Oh,
Mandalorian.
I did see
So
that.
it's like the whole month, yeah.
This is the May. I kind of like that. I kind
Yeah,
of
this
like
is
that.
the May. That's what it was.
This is-
I said it completely wrong, but that's okay.
But I knew what you meant, so it's okay.
I mean, that's completely fine with me, even though I've been watching, Star Trek because of this. But I need to. Okay, go on.
So basically, Kirk listens to a couple of things out of his record, and he only listens to like 2 things, and he's like, "Oh, shut it off!" Like he's really like, "Oh God, I'm a terrible person." Like he really is pretty upset by what the Kirk in this universe is like. Because he's really, I mean, Kirk may be, oh, he may be a ladies' man, he may be beyond a ladies' man, but he's not the guy to, kill 5,000 colonists. He's not the guy
Right.
to kill his captain. He's not that guy.
He's still a good person, despite his
Exactly.
faults.
No, exactly. And I think he gets so like disgusted by, his record that he's just like, oh no, like turn it off. And so Scotty tells him that when they tap into the warp engine's power, it's going to show up on Sulu's security board, and he needs to be distracted for like a couple of seconds. So Kirk's like, I'll tell Uhura to create a distraction on the bridge. And then Kirk's like, I wonder what's happening on the other Enterprise with our doppelgangers over there. And this is the only scene we get of the other universe people. Kirk is being literally dragged down the corridor by 2 security
He's like screaming like a banshee.
He's like, like he's just completely lost it. It's pretty hilarious. They're dragging him down the corridor. They throw him in the brig. We see Uhura's in there, and Scotty and Bones, and they're Kirk says, I'll have everybody killed. And Spock says, I think not. Which is just the most Spock thing to say in that deadpan dry voice. I think not. Kirk tries to like bribe him. He's like, do you want power? Do you want credits? I can get you a captaincy. And Spock is just fascinated. He's just like, fascinating. This is like, it's like he's studying a specimen under a microscope. He just cannot believe how interesting these other versions of them are.
And that's how I felt after watching this and going, and realizing that it wasn't as I remembered, like I was like, fascinating.
Yeah. I love that that Spock at this point is just basically like, I wish I could study you more. Like, I just want to know more about this side of humanity. I do also think it is hilarious to me that Kirk is like, where's your beard? And I'm just like, oh, it's such a thing! Like, it is a thing! Like, has he had that beard since he was a baby? And, like, he's never been without it? That Kirk's like, where's your beard? Like, it would, like, he could never shave it off. It's just, like, the funniest thing for him to say, the demand to know where his beard is. Oh man. So back to the Mirror Enterprise, Spock tells Kirk that he's very relieved that Chekhov didn't succeed in killing Kirk. And this is a very interesting conversation where we kind of get some insights into this Spock, where he says that he has no ambition to be captain. He prefers his science missions, like to devote, time to studying science. And he likes the idea that he's not as big of a target as Kirk is. So we're kind of seeing the beginnings of a question here of like, how could somebody as logical and as non-ambitious as Spock be a part of this empire? Like it doesn't really make sense here. Although I think in Spock's mind, he's very logical about why he's a part of this empire.
He doesn't really have a choice.
He doesn't. It's true, but then
At this point.
But if you think about it, like later on, like at the very end of the episode, when right before Kirk leaves and he's trying to reason with Spock in those that last minute, and he says to him like, how long can this empire sustain itself logically? And Spock is like, oh, I've done the calculations, it's about another 240 years before the empire collapses. And so Kirk is like, why
I loved that bit.
Like he knew exactly, like he could have told you down to the day, the hour, if it was in the afternoon, it was a light breeze coming in from the southwest. Like he could have told you everything. But he knows that the empire can't sustain itself, but he's choosing to be a part of it. Or is it that does he not have a choice? That's a good question. I find that really, to use a Spock word, I find that very fascinating. That he knows this empire cannot sustain itself. He knows it will eventually implode, but yet he's still a part of it, but he's almost not a part of it.
Do you ever wonder if some of the Nazi people felt that way? Sorry to make this political or whatever.
That's a really interesting question. I mean,
because it's sort of like it's it's an empire. It's sort of the same sort of thing, It's like just taking over places with fear and armies, and they're showing their power and everything. I mean, that's really.
I mean, I do think that the mirror universe is supposed to represent like the Nazi regime in a lot of ways, just because it was pretty close to that the war ended only what
20 years
20 years before this.
23 years, I guess. What? Because this one was 68. There you said 67. This was 67, so 22 years.
Yeah, I mean, there were probably people, not even probably. DeForest Kelley, I'm sure, probably served in World War II. I'm sure there were actors and people who were involved in the show who had served in World War II. I believe Gene Roddenberry did. So, I mean, to say that the mirror universe is a parallel or it's a narrative for the Nazi regime, I don't think that's completely out of left field. I think that's probably totally spot on. Because it's in the collective memory of these people.
I was gonna. Sorry, I kept interrupting you. I was gonna say it's in their like subconscious. So even if it wasn't purposeful, it still could have come out that way just because it was in the collective conscious.
Absolutely. Yeah, when it's ingrained, it's part of you. You can't help but see that narrative coming through in a lot. And I think that with all the episodes that, especially the original series, they did a lot of episodes where like somehow there were Nazis involved. Like they went back in time, City on the Edge of Tomorrow. Then there was another planet which was like based on Nazi Germany for some reason.
Patterns of Force.
Thank you. I couldn't remember the name of that one.
It's one of my favorites too.
That's another great episode too. But the idea of like the Nazis being part of still in our collective memory, I mean, even more so back in 69. I mean, that's like you guys were saying, it was just 22 years since the war had ended. So yeah, I think this is definitely a Nazi story in a way. How much Spock? I mean, could Spock have been like, well, I'm not really participating fully in how this empire works. Like, I'm not assassinating captains and moving up in ranks. I'm just here like to do my job and like study science and be the first officer and like make some money out of this. I mean, could that be his sort of excuse to himself? Like, well, I'm not really that bad. Maybe it is. I mean, I think that this is a fascinating question that this episode asks. Spock knows that this empire cannot sustain itself. It's not sustainable, and yet he's still a part of it and will not change it. And why? And I just it's such a fascinating question that really makes him think at the end of the episode. But yeah, Good stuff. um, in this scene, we do finally see Chekhov in the